Mick Jagger, 82, names the 5 celebrities he couldn't stand.
You got, I can't compete.
He's 82 now, older, wiser, and finally, unfiltered. For decades, Mick Jagger was the untouchable face of rock and roll, the man who was the era itself. But even legends have scars. Now, for the first time, Jagger pulls back the curtain, naming the 5 stars he despised most, the ones who cut deepest and left marks no spotlight could hide.
Rock and roll's gotten to such a weird thing now because so many people analysing it. And
this isn't the polished frontman grinning through interviews. It's the truth of the man who's seen it all. Fame, betrayal, and the slow fading of old loyalties. And it starts with the one name no one ever expected him to say. Someone he once called a brother. They shared stages that made history. Crowds screamed their names in unison. Mick Jagger and Keith Richards, the unstoppable force behind the Rolling Stones. 2 rebels, 2 geniuses. But when ego met envy, their friendship cracked, and what was once electric turned toxic. "We were like fire and gasoline," Mick Jagger recalls, his voice carrying the weight of decades of rivalry. But at some point, the fire only wanted to burn me. The 1980s were supposed to be the Rolling Stones' golden era, a time of triumph, record-breaking tours, and the world at their feet. But behind the flashing lights and roaring crowds, a quieter, deadlier war was unfolding. Keith Richards' memoirs hit the shelves, and suddenly, Mick found himself laid bare for the world to dissect. The words weren't just observations, they were accusations. Keith had called him unbearable, a word that cut deeper than any knife, because it came from the man who had shared every stage, every victory, every late-night cigarette, and every private hell. Each sentence in that book was a betrayal, every line a calculated strike. Mick didn't respond at the time. He stayed silent, but the silence was heavy, almost volcanic. Rehearsals in Amsterdam became exercises in tension. Keith, often drunk and unrestrained, would storm through songs, interrupting Mick mid-lyric, hijacking the stage with that crooked grin that seemed to say, "I know exactly what I'm doing, and you can't stop me." That's when I hated him for the first time, Mick admits now. Decades later, as if reliving every second of that cold, electric fury, their silence became a fragile shield, a protective armor. On stage, the Stones played as if nothing was wrong, a dazzling performance masking a simmering civil war behind the guitars and drum beats. Decades passed, yet the tension never softened. Then came Rio. 200,000 screaming fans. The lights blazed, the crowd roared, and the music thundered across the stadium. The final note lingered in the humid night air, and Keith walked off. Not a glance at Mick, not a single word, just the echo of a closing door that seemed to reverberate straight through Jagger's chest. But if you think that was the ultimate betrayal, you're only scratching the surface. Because the next name on Mick's list isn't a fellow Stones legend. It's someone younger, hungrier, someone audacious enough to try and steal not just his spotlight, but his very legacy. And when that storm hits, it will make even the Stones' most notorious battles look tame by comparison. It was an interview that instantly set the world abuzz. Headlines didn't just report it, they roared. Mick J was talking about a young pop star, and not just any star. Charming, strikingly handsome, shirt open just enough to tease, hips swaying with effortless rhythm, Harry Styles. And then, almost casually, with a calm that belied the storm beneath, Mick delivered the line that hit the music world like a lightning bolt. "He doesn't move like me." On the surface, it seemed offhand, a passing comment from an aging rock icon, maybe even a joke. But anyone who knew Mick knew better. This was no mere quip. It was a declaration, a quiet, simmering challenge, a warning shot fired across the stage of pop culture. Weeks passed. The comment drifted into memes, interviews, social media chatter. People laughed it off, but then came the photos, published in a glossy British music magazine, seemingly innocent yet searing with intent. Harry posed in a way that was unmistakably Mick, lips slightly parted, eyes locked on the camera as though saying, "I'm the new one. I'm coming for your throne." The caption beneath was ice cold, the true heir to the rock god. Mick was on a flight to Los Angeles when he saw it. Witnesses say he didn't speak for several minutes, just sat, staring. Then slowly, deliberately, he folded the magazine and dropped it into the trash.
"It was like someone was wearing my skin," he reportedly told a friend later. A few days later, fate forced a meeting. Backstage at a festival in London, Styles approached. Polite, almost reverent, yet there was a distance in his eyes, a subtle coolness. Mick stared, long and unblinking, and then whispered a single line, as sharp as a razor and heavy with meaning. "Enjoy it while you can. Fame is like champagne, sweet until you see the bottom." Styles chuckled, nervously, but Mick's gaze didn't soften. In that fleeting moment, he had glimpsed a shadow of the future, someone chasing legend without understanding the cost, the pain, the darkness that comes with it. "I wasn't angry because he copied me," Mick would later admit. "I was angry because he thinks that's all there is." The words linger in the air, bitter, haunting, almost resigned. Yet as applause for the new generation grew louder, a more painful betrayal was quietly taking shape. One that didn't come from a successor, but from someone who had once clung to Mick like a sister. In the world of show business, smiles can be sharper than knives. Tina Turner, unstoppable, electrifying, a hurricane of talent on stage, was initially more than a colleague to Mick J. She was inspiration incarnate. Together, they conquered stages, shared the heat of blinding lights, felt the surge of the crowd's adoration. But admiration has a delicate edge, and in that world, the line between trust and treachery is thinner than the spotlight's beam. But admiration can be fragile. It can twist into rivalry, and trust can morph into a silent, simmering battle. That tension came to a head during a grand live gala in the United States. The plan had been simple: a duet, a symbolic moment, a meeting of two legends on one stage. They had rehearsed endlessly, perfected every note, every gesture. The world was watching. The cameras were ready. The headlines were practically written. And then, just before the lights hit, Tina changed everything. The duet was gone, the joint performance erased. All that remained was a single sharp sentence, uttered with icy finality. "I've decided it works better if I do it alone." Mick stood frozen, the microphone heavy in his hand, as the production team scrambled in chaos behind him. And then she appeared. Tina stepped onto the stage, and the crowd erupted. Every movement she made shimmered under the lights, every note struck with precision, every lyric a triumph. Mick remembers it vividly. He said, "I understood it," he said quietly years later. "She didn't want to sing with me. She wanted to win." A producer who witnessed it recalls, "He was calm, almost motionless, but in his eyes there was something rare, a mixture of disappointment and admiration. He knew she had beaten him." Afterwards, Tina reportedly approached him, her smile radiant and confident. "You're the gentleman of yesterday, Mick." Gentleman. Yesterday. Two tiny words, but sharp as a blade, embedding themselves in him. Mick said nothing. He smiled, performed, carried on, but the sting lingered, waiting for the next strike. And it didn't take long, this time from someone who wore no mask, someone who didn't need one. Sometimes you can see hatred long before it is spoken. No, Gallagher was like that. He didn't beat around the bush, he said it outright. One evening in London, at a music awards gala filled with producers, rock icons, and rising stars, Mick moved through the crowd. Elegant, composed, almost detached. Then Gallagher appeared. Loud, brash, glass in hand, that smirk that seemed to mock the world itself. The room froze. Then came the line, half joke, half jab. "You're the reason rock and roll sounds old." The crowd laughed, some even clapped. Mick, he stayed silent. He knew the weight of what had just landed, a public humiliation delivered like a scalpel right in the spotlight. Backstage, it didn't end. Gallagher, fueled by audacity, was overheard, still loud, still taunting. "Make way, Grandpa. We're the ones making the music now. You're just playing catch-up." A sound engineer remembers Mick's reaction clearly. He turned slowly, eyes locked on Gallagher. No word, no smile, just that gaze, cold, piercing, as if he could look straight through him. Then he walked away. No argument, no rebuttal, no retaliation, just silence. The room was quiet, yet heavy with something unspoken. Alone in his dressing room, Mick Jagger reportedly whispered, "I'm tired of all the noise." Not anger, just hollow exhaustion. The music, the lights, the applause he had once lived for now felt like mockery. The empire he'd built with sweat and swagger seemed to have turned against him. But silence never lasts long in a life like his. The next noise came from a source he never expected, a man he had once called a brother. They had shared laughter, champagne, stages, and secrets. A bond forged in the wild chaos of rock and roll. David Bowie, the chameleon, the visionary, the man who never stopped reinventing himself. And Mick Jagger, the eternal survivor of rock, always chasing, always performing. Two men who mirrored each other in brilliance and danger, yet whose friendship had the precarious edge of a high wire. He was like a brother to me, Mick reflects now. Brilliant, unpredictable, always one step ahead. But in show business, friendships are like fire, comforting, warming, until one spark ignites a blaze. At first, it was pure admiration, late nights of inspiration, wild ideas and excess that fueled creativity. But admiration has a shadow, and closeness can turn into competition faster than anyone expects. An insider recalls one night in the 1980s, shortly after the release of Dancing in the Street. Bowie arrived late to the after-party, flanked by press and models, and the night that was meant to celebrate collaboration began to feel like a battlefield. Mick was already there, waiting. The air crackled the moment they locked eyes. Bowie approached, a sweet smile masking a blade-sharp edge. "You know, Mick, you're the original who's become his own copy." The room froze. Mick laughed, a sound that tried to hide the sting, but something flickered in his eyes, something Bowie knew he had hit. Later, backstage, Mick supposedly confessed to a friend, voice low and dangerous, "I don't want to sing, I want to outlive him." A sound engineer remembers Bowie sneering at him that very night. He still dances, but he doesn't feel anything anymore. Each word cut like a tiny dagger, invisible yet unforgettable. Friends said Mick retreated that evening to his hotel terrace, alone with the city lights, murmuring to himself, "Maybe he was the only one who ever truly knew me." And that, it seemed, was the heart of it all. In the end, Mick Jagger stands alone on the stage of his life. The lights blaze down, the applause fades, and amid the glitter and betrayal, one bitter truth remains. Success is a crown forged in solitude, and its price is more than most can bear.